The woman literally shrieked, "That belongs to my son," while pointing at my freshly restored 1870s log cabin, a cabin I'd legally purchased, fully documented, cash in hand. Picture this. I'm running my palm across century-old, hand-hewn beams, breathing in that sweet scent of oiled cedar, when Belinda Stockworth comes marching across my property line. Her heels click against my new porch boards like a machine gun as she waves crumpled papers in my face. "My Bradley deserves this inheritance," she screams, her shrill voice cutting through the mountain air. "Here's what burns me up. I bought this place fair and square at a county auction. Complete legal sale, proper deed, zero complications. But Belinda had the HOA board in her back pocket. 2 decades of crushing neighbors who dared to challenge her authority. What she didn't know was that I'd just discovered something in the cabin's hidden cellar that would destroy her lies completely. What would you do if your dream project suddenly became someone else's family inheritance overnight? Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and whether your HOA has ever tried something this outrageous. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name's Garrett Thornfield, and 6 months ago, I was a burned-out software consultant going through the world's messiest divorce in Portland. You know that feeling when life hits you like a freight train carrying your ex-wife's lawyer bills? Yeah, that was me. My grandfather had been a carpenter, one of those old-school craftsmen who could make magic with nothing but hand tools and patience. When he passed, he left me a modest inheritance and some advice. Good work takes time, son. Measure twice, cut once, and never let bullies push you around. So when I found this listing, historic 1870s cabin, 2.3 acres, needs restoration, $85,000, something clicked. The photos showed hand-hewn Douglas fir beams sitting on an original stone foundation, tucked inside Pinewood Estates, a gated community of 47 homes in the Washington Mountains. The seller was the county. The previous owner, elderly recluse Edwin Holbrook, had died without a will. No family, no heirs, just this piece of history sitting empty while lawyers sorted probate. I drove up on a foggy morning, and the scent of pine needles mixed with damp earth hit me like nature's antidepressant. The cabin sat on a gentle slope, surrounded by evergreens that had probably witnessed the Civil War. When I ran my palm along those massive logs, I could feel generations of craftsmanship in every hand-cut joint. The county auction was straightforward. A few contractors showed up, saw the work involved, and bailed. Me. I saw therapy with a roof. I made the winning bid and walked out with a deed, rusty keys, and the biggest project of my life. The first few weeks were pure bliss, stripping old chinking, treating logs, discovering the stone foundation was solid as my ex-wife's prenup demands. That's when I found the hidden root cellar beneath the kitchen floorboards. Original storage, carved right into bedrock. And there, wrapped in oilcloth behind a loose stone, sat Edwin Holbrook's leather journal. Pages yellowed but readable, documenting mountain life in neat handwriting. Most entries were mundane: weather, repairs, wildlife observations, but scattered throughout were references to BS. Those entries told a darker story about lies, cheating, and stolen lumber deals. Enter Belinda Stockworth, HOA president, community tyrant, and owner of the biggest McMansion in Pinewood Estates. Picture a 4,800 square foot monument to suburban excess, complete with a manicured lawn that probably required a NASA irrigation system. She lived there with Donald, a retired bank VP, and their 28-year-old son Bradley, unemployed, entitled, and apparently making laziness his life's calling. Week 3 of restoration, the crunch of gravel announced Belinda's BMW like an air raid siren. She emerged wearing a business suit that cost more than my entire tool budget, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp. "You're the new owner," she demanded. Not a question, an indictment. "Garrett Thornfield." I extended my hand, but she examined it like evidence at a crime scene. "We need to discuss your permit violations." I blinked. "Ma'am, I have county permits." The building department said HOA approval wasn't needed for restoration. Her smile could have frozen hellfire. "Mr. Thornfield, you don't understand Pinewood Estates. This community has standards." Then came the bombshell that changed everything. "Edwin Holbrook was my late husband's business partner back in the 60s, she said. "They had an understanding. This property would stay in the family. My son Bradley has moral rights to this cabin. The audacity," hit me like the smell of her overpowering floral perfume mixing with fresh sawdust. She actually believed her sob story gave her legal claim to my property. "You bought stolen goods," she continued, voice rising. "I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing. Sell to Bradley for what you paid, $85,000. No profit from our family's loss." When I politely declined, her mask slipped completely. "Then you'll face the consequences. Work stops immediately pending architectural review. $500 daily fines until compliance. And if you fight me, there are lawyers who specialize in removing problematic residents." Standing there, listening to this woman threaten my legal project while claiming imaginary inheritance rights, I realized my peaceful mountain retreat had just become a battlefield. Belinda wasted no time turning her threats into action. 3 days after our little chat, I found a certified letter in my mailbox that made my morning coffee taste like battery acid. "Notice of architectural review violations," stamped across the top in aggressive red letters. Apparently, she created something called the Heritage Preservation Committee, which I quickly discovered consisted of exactly 3 people: Belinda, her sister-in-law Carol, and her neighbor Mrs. Rise, whose main qualifications seemed to be nodding enthusiastically whenever Belinda spoke. The violation report was 14 pages of pure bureaucratic terrorism. My crimes against humanity: installing modern electrical outlets instead of keeping the original knob and tube wiring that could have turned my cabin into the world's most expensive campfire. Updating plumbing so I wouldn't need an outhouse in January. And my personal favorite, adding non-period LED lighting instead of, I guess, kerosene lanterns and the constant threat of carbon monoxide poisoning. The irony burned worse than the smell of Belinda's cigarettes drifting across my property line. Her McMansion had a hot tub, granite countertops, and enough outdoor lighting to guide aircraft, but somehow my historically accurate restoration was destroying community character. So I did what any sane person would do. I fought back with research. That weekend, at the County Historical Society, a librarian named Margaret helped me uncover gold. Original 1870s photographs of my cabin. County records proving no HOA existed when it was built. Documentation showing my restoration matched historical accuracy better than anything else in Pinewood Estates. But Edwin's journal provided the real ammunition. Those mysterious BS references started clicking into place when I read this entry from 1968. BS tried another scheme today. Caught him selling our lumber to his side customers while claiming equipment failures delayed our shipments. Man's got no conscience. Good thing I document everything, including the insurance papers he thinks nobody knows about. The musty scent of old leather and aged paper mixed with my wood stain that evening as the pieces fell together. Billy Stockworth, Belinda's late husband, had been running scams on their business partnership for years. Edwin kept evidence, and Belinda was scared to death of what else might surface from the cabin's hidden spaces. That's when Ruby Castellanos made her move. This tough-as-nails neighbor shuffled over during my evening cleanup, her practical shoes crunching on gravel as she glanced around like a Cold War spy. "Son, you're walking into a tiger trap," she whispered. "That woman's got more schemes than a carnival con artist." Ruby broke down Belinda's playbook: manufacture violations, apply pressure, and force below-market sales to family and friends. Previous victims included a teacher driven out over fake pool violations and a veteran harassed because his memorial flag supposedly violated aesthetic standards. "She controls the board through relatives and bribes," Ruby explained. "Been running this place like Stalin ran Russia." I remembered something from my divorce lawyer, property rights law I'd researched when my ex tried claiming ownership of my grandfather's tools. Turns out, HOAs can't retroactively enforce architectural standards on existing structures. Something called grandfather clauses protects legitimate property improvements. The legal principle is simple: you can't manufacture rules just to harass people you don't like. Meanwhile, Belinda's psychological warfare intensified. Daily inspections where she photographed every nail and screw from my property line. Fake noise complaints during legal construction hours. Anonymous flyers warning neighbors about outside agitators threatening property values. The strangest part was watching her performance from my porch each evening. She'd march around taking pictures with the intensity of a documentary filmmaker, occasionally talking to herself and gesturing at my perfectly legal restoration like it was evidence of war crimes. Then Marcus and Diana Price approached me, the young couple 3 houses down, who looked like they'd been through Belinda's torture chamber. "We're next," Marcus admitted, nervously checking over his shoulder. "Pool permit irregularities and fence height violations. We wanted you to know, some of us see what she's really doing." The final escalation came on a Thursday when Belinda arrived with 2 board members during my cellar cleaning. I was simply removing 150 years of accumulated debris when she started shrieking about unauthorized excavation. "You're violating county ordinances," she announced, demanding immediate access for inspection. But here's where Edwin's journal had taught me something crucial about dealing with bullies. Document everything, stay calm, and never give them ammunition. My grandfather's advice echoed in my mind. Measure twice, cut once, and never let anyone push you around on your own property. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice level while my blood pressure spiked, "I'm cleaning an existing space. No excavation, no permits required, and definitely no unauthorized access to my private property." The look that flashed across her face told me everything. This wasn't about regulations or community standards. This was about control, and she was absolutely furious that her usual intimidation tactics weren't working. That's when I realized something that changed everything. Belinda had been winning these battles for years because nobody ever fought back properly. But I wasn't just anybody. I was a man with nothing left to lose, and a growing pile of evidence that would make her very, very sorry she'd picked this fight. Belinda's next move hit me where it hurt most. My wallet and my timeline. Monday morning brought County Building Inspector Jake Morrison, clipboard ready, and an apologetic grimace in place. "Sorry about this, Mr. Thornfield," he said, genuinely uncomfortable. "Formal complaint about unauthorized foundation work. Someone claims you're doing structural modifications without permits." "Pure fiction," I replied. "I was cleaning an existing space, not digging a new foundation. But county regulations required a full reinspection, stopping my work for 2 weeks while paperwork crawled through bureaucracy slower than Bradley looking for employment. The delay triggered Belinda's rumor campaign. Suddenly, neighbors whispered about my finances, questioning whether I could afford proper permits or if I was cutting corners to save money. The sweet mountain air carried gossip faster than pollen in springtime. But my messy divorce had taught me something valuable about fighting dirty opponents. Hire professionals who know the rules. That's how I met Sarah Jules, a lawyer who specialized in HOA harassment cases. Her consultation revealed a beautiful truth. Belinda's legal position was weaker than wet tissue paper. "She's operating on intimidation and bluff," Sarah explained while reviewing my documentation. "Keep photographing everything. File counter complaints with the State Oversight Board, and let her mistakes accumulate. In property law, the person with better records usually wins." I'd learned that lesson the hard way during my divorce, when my ex-wife's lawyer tried claiming ownership of my grandfather's workshop tools. Meticulous documentation, receipts, photos, witness statements, everything timestamped and organized, had saved me thousands. Now, I applied the same strategy to Belinda's harassment campaign. Requesting official HOA meeting minutes revealed suspicious gaps during every forced property sale. Lost documents whenever someone questioned board authority. Financial records showing heritage fund expenditures to family members' businesses. The pattern was clearer than mountain air after rainfall. Then I caught Bradley red-handed. Thursday afternoon, returning from the lumberyard, I found him casually strolling around my cabin like he was conducting a real estate appraisal. Gravel crunched under his designer sneakers as he tried acting innocent. "Just checking out my future property," he said with the smug entitlement of someone who'd never earned a thing in his life. But here's the twist that changed everything. Bradley had keys. Not just casual trespassing, but actual access to my property. When I demanded an explanation, his response revealed the depth of their delusion. "Mom gave them to me," he said. "The previous owner left them with the HOA for emergencies, and since this is rightfully family property anyway, the audacity was breathtaking, but also legally actionable. HOAs don't hold emergency keys to private property. That's called breaking and entering when you're not the owner." Belinda had apparently convinced her son that imaginary inheritance rights included actual access privileges. Meanwhile, Edwin's journal was revealing more secrets nightly. Reading by restored oil lamp in my cabin, I discovered Billy Stockworth's insurance scam from 1967, equipment failures that delayed lumber deliveries while Billy sold inventory to private customers. Edwin documented everything, including a crucial line: insurance papers hidden in foundation stones, where Billy's greed can't find them. That phrase echoed in my mind as I continued cellar restoration. Insurance papers hidden in foundation stones. My grandfather always said mountain folks were clever about protecting important documents. And suddenly, I knew exactly where to look. Belinda, however, wasn't done. She orchestrated an emergency HOA meeting with Soviet-level control, inviting only her loyal supporters and deliberately excluding opposition voices. The agenda: target my restoration specifically, push through retroactive architectural guidelines, and create a heritage fund for legal action against disruptive residents. Public records later reveal the fund's creative accounting: legal fees to Belinda's cousin's bargain law practice, consulting fees to her sister-in-law's non-existent business, and heritage research expenses that perfectly matched Bradley's car payments. The smell of financial corruption was stronger than fresh paint fumes. At the lumberyard, Pete Kowalski filled in the family's backstory. Edwin Holbrook, Pete said, honest man, respected, meticulous record keeper. Billy Stockworth, though, he had a reputation for flexible contracts and creative invoicing. Your lady's been poisoning the well against honest contractors for 20 years. He offered materials at cost. About time someone fought back properly. The escalation peaked with systematic vandalism. Friday morning, I found broken windows, scattered tools, and spray paint splashed across my restored logs. The chemical tang of aerosol violated the clean mountain air like a slap in nature's face. No forced entry. Whoever did it had keys and intimate knowledge of the property. An anonymous note under my windshield made the threat explicit: leave now, or worse happens next. But Marcus Price's IT security background had anticipated this move. Hidden cameras had been recording the entire time. The footage showed Bradley using keys to enter, methodically destroying property to make it look random. Most damning of all, a phone call to his mother. Just mess things up like you said. Make it look like a break-in. Nothing too obvious. Audio evidence of conspiracy between mother and son. Video proof of breaking and entering. Documentation of systematic harassment. When the sheriff's deputy took my report, I wasn't worried about delays in prosecution. I was building an airtight case for Belinda's complete destruction. Even her supporters started to look uneasy after the vandalism. Ruby condemned it publicly, and several neighbors privately expressed disgust. But Belinda doubled down with her usual delusion, blaming me for attracting criminal elements through aggressive restoration tactics. Standing in my vandalized cabin that evening, reading her demand for an emergency community vote about my supposed threat to neighborhood safety, I realized something crucial. She wasn't just entitled or controlling. She was genuinely unhinged, and unhinged people always make fatal errors. Belinda's desperation peaked with a legal threat so absurd it belonged in a comedy sketch. Her cut-rate attorney cousin served me a cease and desist, claiming my restoration violated a historical preservation easement that existed only in their imagination. The demand was breathtaking: $25,000 restoration bond pending resolution, plus immediate cessation of all work. The thick, expensive legal paper crinkled in my hands as I read 6 pages of creative fiction masquerading as law, complete with threats of asset seizure that would have made loan sharks blush. Sarah Jules's reaction was priceless. "This," she said, flipping through the pages, "is like being sued by someone claiming they own the moon." Then she laughed and began dismantling every single word. "His law license must be held together with duct tape and desperation," Sarah muttered, flipping through Belinda's cousin's so-called legal brief. But while she prepared our counterattack, I was solving Edwin's puzzle about those hidden insurance papers. Following his journal clues, I began examining the foundation stones systematically. Wednesday afternoon, alone in the cellar with just my flashlight, I found a deliberately loose stone near the eastern wall. What I discovered inside changed everything. Inside the cavity were insurance documents from 1967 showing that Billy Stockworth had claimed a mill fire destroyed a shipment of premium-grade lumber, the very same lumber Edwin's journal documented Billy selling privately weeks before the accident. This wasn't just a business dispute. It was insurance fraud worth thousands in 1960s money. The evidence was 50 years old and legally expired, but it proved Edwin's character assessment was spot on, and it explained why Belinda was so terrified of what else might surface from the cabin's hidden spaces. Then Bradley's harassment campaign went mobile. He started appearing at Murphy's coffee shop, where I worked remotely, staging loud phone conversations about family property being stolen by corporate raiders. His performance was pure community theater, a tragic hero routine about a wounded son fighting for his heritage against a greedy outsider. The barista, a college kid named Tyler, eventually pulled me aside, barely containing his laughter. "Dude, that guy's been practicing his sob story in the mirror," he whispered. "He keeps using the same phrases and dramatic pauses every time." Bradley's social media campaign was equally pathetic. Help Bradley Reclaim Family Heritage featured carefully staged photos of him looking mournful outside my cabin gates. The comment section exposed Belinda's digital puppetry, multiple fake accounts, all with the same grammar mistakes, parroting outrage about greedy developers stealing family legacies. But Belinda's most desperate move hit below the belt. She somehow contacted my ex-wife, conducting a clumsy background check that backfired spectacularly. Jennifer called that evening, her voice a mix of curiosity and irritation. "Some crazy woman from Washington just spent 20 minutes asking about your mental health, drinking habits, and potential for violence," she said. She wanted dirt for some kind of harassment campaign. During my divorce, I'd learned one critical survival skill: document everything, because desperate people twist any information they can find. That knowledge had saved me thousands when Jennifer's lawyer tried painting me as financially irresponsible. "I told her you're stubborn and obsessed with old tools," Jennifer continued dryly. "But violent and unstable? Not your style." Then I asked why strangers were investigating my ex-husband's background. She hung up pretty fast. Meanwhile, Sarah's investigation uncovered that the HOA itself was operating illegally. They failed to renew their state registration for 2 years, meaning every vote, every fine, and every rule enforcement since then was legally void. "The Heritage Fund has $12,000 in it," Sarah told me, and the accounting records would embarrass a lemonade stand. "This is called operating without legal authority. Every violation notice they've issued is completely unenforceable because they're not even a legitimate HOA anymore." Meanwhile, Marcus's upgraded security system was documenting Belinda's meltdown in glorious HD 47 separate harassment incidents, each timestamped, archived, and backed by clear video evidence. Bradley's repeated trespassing attempts were now unmistakably part of an organized conspiracy. The climax came when Belinda staged her most elaborate deception yet: a fake gas emergency. She arrived with Bradley and 2 board members, carrying a handheld device that beeped hysterically near my foundation. "Critical safety situation," she announced with mock concern. Multiple neighbors reported gas odors. "We need immediate access for professional assessment." But years of debugging software had taught me to question easy answers. The gas detector turned out to be a smoke alarm with a dying battery, and the neighbors who supposedly reported leaks didn't exist, confirmed by county emergency dispatch. My hidden cameras captured everything: Belinda's evidence-planting attempt, complete with audio of her coaching Bradley. "Place those violation tags on the electrical outlets while I distract him. Make it look like we discovered code problems during the emergency." When Deputy Rodriguez arrived, thanks to Sarah's prearranged tip-off, Belinda was caught red-handed, literally marking fake violations on my walls. "Ma'am," the deputy said, body camera recording every word, "we need to discuss filing false emergency reports and attempted fraud." Meanwhile, Ruby was streaming the entire fiasco live on Facebook. The community watched as the self-proclaimed queen of Pinewood Estates was exposed in real time. Comments exploded: shock, anger, laughter. Even her most loyal supporters began abandoning ship faster than rats fleeing a sinking yacht. The evidence planting wasn't just HOA harassment anymore, it was criminal activity. Multiple agencies opened investigations, and Belinda's power evaporated like mountain mist under morning sun. That evening, as the sheriff's taillights disappeared down the winding road, I stood on my porch and breathed in the quiet. For the first time in months, the air smelled like cedar and peace instead of stress and fear. The war was nearly over. Belinda Stockworth, once the tyrant of Pinewood Estates, had transformed into a desperate criminal whose empire was unraveling faster than a cheap sweater in a washing machine. Then came Sarah's call on Tuesday morning, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "I found the smoking gun," she said. Original 1960s partnership dissolution papers, with Billy Stockworth's signature, officially abandoning all future claims to Holbrook Properties. "Your cabin and 2.3 acres are specifically mentioned in the legal waiver," Sarah said, her eyes gleaming as she slid the document across the table. The sweet irony made my head spin. Belinda had spent months screaming about family inheritance rights to property her own husband had legally forfeited 60 years ago. Her entire crusade had been built on lies she'd probably repeated so often that she believed them herself. But the state HOA oversight board's audit delivered the knockout punch. The Heritage Fund investigation uncovered $8,000 in unauthorized transfers to Stockworth family accounts, Bradley's car payments disguised as legal consulting, their Hawaii vacation labeled heritage research, even Donald's country club membership filed under community outreach expenses. "This crosses from civil harassment into criminal embezzlement," Sarah explained, spreading the evidence across my kitchen table. Morning light streamed through my newly restored windows, glinting off the piles of legal documents like treasure. "We're looking at felony charges, 5 to 10 years in prison." The scent of fresh wood polish mingled with the musty odor of old paper as we organized our case. Every sheet was another nail in Belinda's coffin, another piece of justice finally catching up to her. Then Bradley's arrest triggered a domino effect that shattered their facade completely. Security footage led to multiple charges: breaking and entering, vandalism, and possession of methamphetamine paraphernalia, which explained his erratic behavior and constant need for cash. "She's been using her addicted son as a weapon," Deputy Rodriguez told me during the evidence review. "That's not just property harassment, that's criminal exploitation of a vulnerable adult." The HOA collapsed faster than a stale cookie and coffee. 2 board members resigned immediately upon learning their votes had no legal standing because the organization hadn't been properly registered for years. Carol, Belinda's sister-in-law, faced accessory charges for knowingly participating in the embezzlement. For the first time in decades, neighbors organized legitimate meetings. The toxic hierarchy was gone, replaced by real community. And then, out of nowhere, Edwinsville surfaced, like a ghost stepping out of the past to deliver poetic justice. The document had been misplaced during probate but reappeared after Sarah's formal record request triggered a county clerk investigation. When I read it, I laughed out loud. Edwin had established a $15,000 restoration trust with explicit exclusion of any Stockworth family members from benefiting. His words were crystal clear: to protect mountain heritage from those who would exploit community resources for personal enrichment. He knew exactly what they were, the trust attorney confirmed. 60 years ago, Edwin Holbrook saw through their schemes and made sure future generations would be protected. Belinda's desperation spiraled into madness. She tried bribing county officials, filed a fraudulent bankruptcy to dodge restitution, and even made threats against witnesses who might testify. Her husband, Donald, finally broke. He filed for divorce and turned state's evidence, handing investigators 20 years of insider knowledge. "I enabled her because I was afraid," he admitted during his interview. "But watching what she did to you made me realize I'd become an accomplice to evil." The transformation in Pinewood Estates was stunning. Property values shot up overnight as legitimate leadership replaced Belinda's dictatorship. New families began inquiring about homes, drawn by the news that the HOA tyrant's reign was over. Ruby organized open meetings that achieved more progress in one evening than Belinda's fake committees had in 2 decades. Marcus and Diana Price handled communication, security, and bylaws. For once, the place felt like a community instead of a prison camp. Standing in my nearly finished cabin that night, running my hand along Edwin's hand-carved mantelpiece, I finally understood the deeper purpose of this project. It wasn't just about saving an old building, it was about proving that patience, persistence, and principle can defeat corruption. Belinda was facing criminal prosecution, and I had the law, the evidence, and the community on my side. Her 20-year dictatorship was in ruins, but I also knew desperate criminals rarely go quietly. The final confrontation was coming, and I was ready. Sarah spread our battle plan across my dining table like a general preparing for war. Afternoon sun streamed through my windows, catching dust motes dancing above evidence files that could end Belinda's life as she knew it. Three-pronged attack, she said, tracing her finger across our outline. Criminal prosecution for embezzlement. Civil recovery for harassment damages. Injunctive relief to prevent future abuse. It's like playing chess when your opponent doesn't even know the rules. The legal beauty was in the details. Tortious interference, when someone deliberately damages your property rights through systematic harassment, opened the door for punitive damages far beyond restitution. Every fake violation, every threat, every intimidation attempt was now a billable offense in our favor. Here's what most homeowners never realize, Sarah added, showing me a printed calculation that made my eyes widen. When HOAs operate without proper state registration, board members lose all legal immunity. They become personally liable for every fine, every threat, every act of harassment. Belinda's not just losing her title, she's facing personal bankruptcy. That single fact was worth carving into stone. Always verify your HOA's legal status before complying with their demands. 30 seconds of research can save you thousands in illegal fines. Ruby's kitchen became our war room, the smell of her apple pie mixing with the electric hum of strategy. Neighbors who'd been silent for years finally found their voices. Marcus created encrypted communication channels that would have impressed the NSA. Diana drafted new community bylaws. Pete Kowalski offered his lumberyard for town hall gatherings. Most harassment victims lose because they don't document properly, Marcus said, organizing our digital evidence drive. But we've created a masterclass in defeating bullies with documentation. The Holbrook Restoration Trust gave us powerful leverage, $15,000 in legitimate heritage funds for community improvement projects benefiting everyone except the Stockworths. Tangible progress versus decades of financial decay. Even the skeptics could do the math. Sarah's damage calculations were intoxicating. Document every harassment-related expense, she instructed, scanning my stack of receipts. Legal fees, security systems, lost work time, even therapy or medical bills. Washington courts award serious damages for emotional distress when harassment is systematic and proven. She leaned back with a grin. Our file isn't just strong, it's a prosecutor's dream. Her final reminder was simple but powerful. In property law, documentation is justice. Emotional distress damages can exceed financial losses when harassment is ongoing, deliberate, and well documented. Keep records from day one. Our media strategy required surgical precision. The Mountain View Herald wanted to run an exposé on HOA corruption, but Sarah insisted we wait until charges were filed. Evidence speaks louder than outrage, she said. Save righteous anger for the victory celebration. We gathered 12 former victims ready to testify. Families who'd been driven out by Belinda's manipulation and threats. Their stories painted a picture of tyranny disguised as neighborhood order. That night, surrounded by files, friends, and the comforting hum of a rebuilt home, I realized what we had achieved. We hadn't just restored a cabin. We had restored justice to Pinewood Estates and exposed the monster who had ruled it for far too long. State agency coordination was proceeding like clockwork, Sarah said, flipping through her binder while we stood over the kitchen table covered in evidence and legal files. The HOA Oversight Board had received our comprehensive complaints. Consumer Protection launched an embezzlement investigation. County Planning was reviewing permit irregularities. Multiple agencies meant multiple attack vectors. Even if one failed, the others would land their blows. Meanwhile, the historic restoration was nearing completion. Trust funds covered professional electrical and plumbing work, freeing me to focus on period-accurate details, the kind Edwin Holbrook would have approved of. The Historical Society offered guidance on authenticity, while volunteers from Pinewood Estates began organizing a completion celebration, calling it the Community Liberation Festival. Pro tip every homeowner should know, Pete said as he reviewed my lumber order, the smell of fresh pine filling his warehouse. Historic property restoration qualifies for state tax credits and federal heritage grants. Research first, you might get paid to preserve history instead of paying fees to prevent it. While progress surged forward, counterintelligence preparation was in full swing. Sarah's experience with corner defendants had taught her that desperate people resort to desperate tactics. Expect false accusations, evidence destruction, witness intimidation. Basically, the full sociopath playbook, she warned while Marcus installed more cameras and motion sensors around my property. When legal options vanish, criminals look for chaos. We need contingencies for every scenario. Community governance planning became the next mission. We had two options: dissolve the HOA entirely, requiring 75% approval, or rebuild it legally under proper state registration. Ruby emerged as the unanimous choice for interim president, bringing mountain wisdom and a zero-tolerance stance on corruption. New bylaws emphasized transparency, independent audits, and equal enforcement. Former harassment victims were appointed to the accountability committee, ensuring no future tyrant could repeat Belinda's reign of fear. The Heritage Fund was restructured to finance genuine community improvements, park benches, welcome signs, community gardens, things that built connection instead of resentment. Technical documentation told our story visually. Professional photos captured the cabin's transformation from decay to beauty. Historical records confirmed authenticity. Financial data proved rising property values benefiting everyone. Sarah coordinated expert testimony, contractor, historian, appraiser, community development specialist, all lined up like a legal firing squad. Visual evidence wins trials, Sarah noted, studying the before and after photos that looked like magazine spreads. Juries understand pictures better than legal arguments. Your restoration doesn't just prove innocence, it proves legitimate improvement conquers arbitrary harassment. Every contingency was covered. Bankruptcy? We'd file liens to freeze assets. Fleeing the state? Asset recovery would follow. Divide and conquer tactics? The community core would hold steady, isolating enablers one by one. That evening, standing in my nearly completed cabin, I organized case files under the soft glow of a restored oil lamp. The hand-hewn beams above me whispered my grandfather's old mantra: patience, preparation, principle. This fight had grown beyond one woman's corruption. It was about proving that discipline could defeat institutional bullying. The final confrontation was scheduled. County commissioners would hear our case publicly, with reporters, cameras, and justice all watching. After months of harassment and lies, Belinda would finally face accountability. But she wasn't done yet. The character assassination campaign began with a phone call that made my coffee taste like battery acid. Belinda had hired some bottom-feeder private investigator to dig through my divorce records, finances, and personal life with the thoroughness of an archaeological expedition. Within days, whispers spread through Pinewood Estates about my supposed alcohol problems, mental instability, and violent tendencies. Fake social media accounts sprouted like weeds, posting fabricated reviews of my consulting work and stories about stalking behavior. The desperation reeked stronger than Ruby's over-fertilized rose garden. Marcus traced the fake accounts, all of them, back to Belinda's house IP address. Apparently, cybercrime wasn't the Stockworth family's strong suit. The most vicious strike came when Belinda called my ex-wife. Jennifer phoned me that night, her voice equal parts annoyance and disbelief. She spun this ridiculous sob story, she said. Claimed she was being harassed and implied you were unstable. Wanted details about our divorce, whether you'd ever been violent or threatening. I told her you were many things: stubborn, chronically allergic to asking for directions, and obsessed with old tools, but violent wasn't one of them. She hung up fast. During my divorce, I'd learned a golden rule: document every attack, because desperate opponents always overreach and incriminate themselves. Jennifer's recorded call would soon become evidence of malicious interference. Key takeaway: always record interactions with hostile parties when the law allows. Their words are your best defense. Then came the mini-twist that changed everything. Bradley's drug overdose landed him in the county hospital, where social workers uncovered decades of family dysfunction. The real bombshell came from Bradley himself. He confessed that Belinda had been draining his trust fund, money left to him by his grandfather, to finance her HOA wars. She told me the cabin money was really mine, Bradley admitted to investigators. Said once we got it back, she'd restore my inheritance. I was too high to realize she'd already spent it all on lawyers and bribes. 28 years old, discovering his own mother had embezzled his inheritance to fund personal vendettas. Even the social workers were stunned. Donald's breaking point arrived soon after. When Belinda tried to access their retirement accounts for more legal funds, he filed for divorce. His financial disclosures revealed 2 decades of systematic abuse, money siphoned from family accounts into her harassment campaigns. "I enabled her because I was terrified," Donald told his lawyer. "But watching what she did to that man made me realize I'd become an accomplice to evil." The sabotage escalated beyond petty vandalism into organized terrorism. Nails scattered in driveways, mailboxes smashed at midnight, utility lines accidentally cut for anyone supporting me. But Marcus's security network caught everything, including Donald himself, quietly following his wife's orders under visible distress. The recording captured his whispered phone call. "This obsession is destroying our family and our finances. I can't stop her. She's completely lost control." That recording shattered the illusion. Donald wasn't evil, just a broken man too afraid to resist Belinda's wrath. The sound of gravel crunching under his reluctant footsteps was the sound of surrender. State investigators soon unearthed even deeper heritage fund fraud, fake invoices, sham consulting contracts, and community security assessments. When deputies arrived, the footage was waiting for them. Planting drugs to frame someone is called evidence tampering and filing false police reports, Deputy Rodriguez said as he handcuffed her for the 3rd time. "Ma'am, you're building your own life sentence." That evening, standing on my completed cabin porch, the smell of cedar and victory heavy in the air, I watched the news crews pack up after filming her final arrest. For the first time, I understood that the story had grown beyond personal revenge. We had created something bigger, a blueprint for justice, a template for communities fighting institutional corruption. And together, we had proven that one determined homeowner could expose an entire system of abuse, beam by beam, truth by truth, until the mountain finally breathed free again. The public hearing was tomorrow. After months of harassment, vandalism, and legal warfare, justice was finally about to be served, with cameras rolling and the entire region watching. Belinda had destroyed herself completely, and now the world would witness her downfall. The county courthouse hearing room buzzed like a beehive before a storm. Every seat was filled, people standing shoulder to shoulder while overflow crowds streamed the event live on their phones outside. The scent of old wood polish, cheap courthouse coffee, and nervous perspiration filled the air as 3 regional TV stations jockeyed for camera angles. At the front, the county commissioners sat elevated like judges at a public tribunal. Beside them, District Attorney Patricia Wells arranged boxes of evidence that could sink a battleship. The state HOA oversight representative had flown in from Olympia, and 2 FBI agents occupied front-row seats, notebooks open. Ruby testified first. Her weathered mountain voice carried through the packed room with the weight of 2 decades of suppressed outrage. 20 years of fear disguised as leadership, she said. Belinda Stockworth turned our neighborhood into a terror state where families lived in constant dread of made-up violations. Then came Marcus, wielding digital justice like a sword. He projected 47 documented incidents of harassment onto the wall, high-definition footage of Belinda planting evidence, coordinating vandalism, and stalking her neighbors with a camera like some deranged detective. Gasps rippled through the gallery as her madness played out for everyone to see. Diana's trembling voice followed, reading impact statements from 12 families Belinda had financially and emotionally destroyed. Their words painted a picture of lost homes, shattered trust, and years of fear. Pete Kowalski stepped up next, connecting the dots of regional corruption. "She poisoned honest contractors' reputations across 3 counties, he declared, jabbing a finger toward Belinda's empty seat. "Economic terrorism, disguised as consumer protection. Destroying livelihoods to keep control." And then, the door opened. Belinda Stockworth entered in a bright orange jail jumpsuit, wrists shackled, eyes wild. The woman who had ruled through fear now shuffled forward like a broken puppet, strings cut by truth. Even her court-appointed attorney looked like he'd rather defend a wild raccoon. "I demand to address these fabricated accusations," she shrieked, her voice cracking like dry paint. Judge Harrison sighed and allowed her to speak. What followed was 15 minutes of televised psychological collapse. Belinda ranted about liberal conspiracies, deep state vendettas, and heritage theft. She accused commissioners of bribery, the FBI of persecution, and me of stealing her family's destiny. "That consultant destroyed everything my family built," she screamed, voice hoarse, spittle flying. "Some divorced outsider can't steal our mountain heritage with lawyers and lies." The courtroom sat frozen as the meltdown unfolded. Deputies exchanged uneasy glances while the cameras captured every deranged word. Then came Sarah Jules's presentation, calm and surgical. She laid out the partnership dissolution papers bearing Billy Stockworth's signature renouncing all property claims. Edwin Holbrook's will excluding every Stockworth descendant. Financial audits showing $47,000 in embezzled funds used for vacations, cars, and heritage research. "This is overwhelming, irrefutable evidence of a systematic criminal enterprise," Sarah concluded. "This case demonstrates why property owners need legal protection from institutional abuse masquerading as community governance." District Attorney Wells took the stand next, her voice steady as stone. "Federal racketeering, mail fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement, evidence tampering, criminal harassment," she read from the charge sheet. "Combined potential sentence, 20 years, plus $500,000 in fines and full community restitution." Then she looked directly at Belinda. "Community governance cannot serve as a cover for personal enrichment and systematic neighbor abuse." And then the mic drop moment came. Judge Harrison turned toward me. "Mr. Thornfield, would you like to make a statement before sentencing?" I rose, meeting Belinda's glare head-on. The room went silent, heavy with the weight of years of fear and fury. "Mrs. Stockworth," I began, my voice echoing across the room, "you've spent months claiming I was destroying your community. But the truth is, your 20-year reign of terror poisoned everything good about mountain life. You didn't lose a family inheritance, you lost the right to bully and destroy your neighbors. This restoration didn't ruin Pinewood Estates, it saved it." The courtroom erupted in thunderous applause. Deputies rushed to contain the wave of emotion, but the sound of clapping and shouting filled every corner. Belinda lunged toward me, screaming, "You destroyed everything," before security tackled her to the ground. Cameras caught every second, the end of her empire broadcast across Washington. Judge Harrison slammed his gavel, restoring order. "Federal charges filed. Assets seized. Permanent restraining orders issued," he declared. "The defendant is remanded without bail." And just like that, Belinda's dictatorship was over. Outside, the courthouse plaza transformed into a celebration. People hugged, cried, and laughed as news crews captured the rebirth of their freedom. Ruby grabbed my hand, tears glistening on her weathered cheeks. "Son, you didn't just save that cabin," she said. "You saved all of us." Standing in the golden light of the afternoon, I looked toward my cabin across the valley, its timber walls glowing like old amber. Around me, people who'd once been afraid to speak were finally free. For the first time in 20 years, laughter drifted through Pinewood Estates, a sound purer than any verdict. 6 months later, the headlines stretched from Seattle to Spokane. HOA tyrant sentenced. 7 years federal, 4 state, $750,000 fines. Judge Martinez's words resonated through every community meeting and neighborhood boardroom across the state. "Your criminal enterprise transformed community governance into personal terrorism." This sentence reflects society's zero tolerance for institutional abuse. The scent of justice was sweeter than mountain wildflowers. Donald's cooperation earned him probation and a quiet life in eastern Washington, working construction and finally confronting the decades he'd lost to fear. Bradley completed rehab, moved to Missoula, and found purpose as an addiction counselor, determined never to repeat his mother's mistakes. Sometimes, the best family reunions are the ones that never happen again. Corrupt officials met their own reckoning. The county clerk received 3 years in federal prison. The building inspector got 2 and a lifetime ban from public service. The tax assessor lost her license and paid heavy fines. Across Washington, the message was clear: corruption carries consequences. Pinewood Estates rose from the ashes. Ruby's presidency brought transparent governance, rotating leadership, and ironclad term limits. Property values soared 28% as legitimate management replaced extortion. 18 new families moved in, drawn not by fear, but by trust. The reclaimed heritage funds, plus penalties, rebuilt what had been stolen. $47,000 financed the Edwin Holbrook Memorial Workshop, where teenagers learned traditional woodworking and restoration techniques. As I stood in the doorway of my restored cabin, the scent of cedar and wood oil filling the air, I realized what we'd achieved went far beyond justice for one man. We had proven that truth, courage, and community solidarity could rebuild even the most poisoned places. And for the first time in 20 years, Pinewood Estates finally sounded alive, with laughter, hammers, and hope. Place. The community pavilion stood at the center of it all now, a space where neighbors actually talked instead of plotted. Kids raced through organic gardens, families grew vegetables instead of grievances, and laughter replaced gossip as the soundtrack of Pinewood Estates. My cabin, once the battleground for a local dictatorship, had become an unexpected regional landmark, featured in Better Homes and Gardens as David Beats Goliath, Historic Restoration Edition. The Holbrook Workshop program blossomed, connecting mountain youth with the craftsmanship heritage their grandparents had nearly forgotten, teaching patience, precision, and pride in an age of instant gratification. You could hear the rhythmic echo of hammers each morning, a kind of hymn to the dignity of honest labor. Sarah Jules's name became legend. Her expertise gained national recognition, our case cited in 23 subsequent HOA prosecutions. Her handbook, Property Rights and Protection from HOA Abuse, became required reading for victims of harassment, proof that systematic documentation defeats systematic bullying every single time. Even Hollywood took notice. Netflix released Cabin Conspiracy, a gripping documentary that reached 2.8 million viewers and ignited a national debate on HOA reform. Media outlets from 60 Minutes to Reader's Digest to This Old House covered the story, discovering that David versus Goliath tales, especially ones fought with spreadsheets and security cameras, make for irresistible television. But the greatest surprise was personal. Dr. Emily Watson, the Historical Society curator who'd helped uncover Edwin Holbrook's legacy, became more than just a colleague. Her mountain heritage expertise complemented my restoration obsession, and somewhere between the blueprints and cedar beams, we found each other. Partner in preservation and in life, she called it. Even Jennifer, my ex-wife, admitted during our surprisingly cordial Christmas call. She's a significant upgrade. The regional impact kept growing. 3 neighboring communities reached out for guidance, sparking the creation of the Pacific Northwest Property Rights Alliance. Marcus and Diana launched a consulting firm that helped harassment victims document and defend their cases professionally. Pete's Lumberyard expanded 40%, fueled by contractors and homeowners inspired by our fight, proof that integrity can be good for business. The Mountain Justice Workshop series became a movement, teaching hundreds of families how to protect their property rights through documentation, legal literacy, and coalition building. The sessions covered everything: know your rights, HOA powers and limits, how to file proper evidence. Simple knowledge that saved people thousands in illegal fees and stopped manufactured violations before they started. Ruby's journey came full circle. She ran for county commissioner on a platform of transparency and won in a landslide. Her new rapid response team for HOA corruption ensured that no homeowner would ever again fight alone against institutional bullies. But the legacy I treasure most is the simplest one. Standing on my porch this golden evening, watching neighborhood children play in streets where fear once ruled, listening to the easy rhythm of laughter echo across the valley, I finally understood restoration's truest meaning. A carved wooden sign now hangs beside my door: Holbrook Heritage Cabin, EST 1871, restored 2025, protected forever. But preservation, I've learned, isn't really about logs or legal precedent. It's about proving that ordinary people, armed with patience, principle, and community support, can defeat any tyrant. My grandfather's carpentry wisdom applies to justice, too. Good work takes time, son. Measure twice, cut once, and never let bullies push you around. Sometimes the most important restoration projects aren't buildings. They're faith and fairness, community, and the courage to keep rebuilding what corruption tried to break. And I swear, the coffee tastes better when you're drinking it in freedom. So if you're out there fighting your own HOA nightmare, share your story. Your experience might help someone else reclaim their dignity and their home. Subscribe for more stories about defeating institutional bullies with courage, preparation, and the legal strategies that work when patience finally meets persistence. Every sunset over these mountains reminds me, sometimes fixing what's broken means tearing down what's corrupt and building something beautiful in its place.